Welcome to episode 1 of Making Insight. I'm your host, Clayton Norman, and today I am joined by Mike Soster. He is a Cleveland gym owner, entrepreneur, veteran, and father. Today we talk about the path that has led him to transforming the lives of many individuals and families here in Cleveland, Ohio through his businesses, Functions of Life, and Shred Fitness. In a moment, I'm going to jump right into the episode. Normally, I like to begin with an introduction to my guest, and I do that a couple minutes in. However, this one started a little bit differently. Prior to me hitting record, I was discussing with Mike how I was really excited to begin podcasting again. And I had mentioned to him that earlier that day, I was writing in my journal and I wrote, I feel sorry for the people who don't get to experience imperfection due to their inability to try. And what I meant by that was I think there are a lot of people out there, me being one of them many times in my past, who have missed out on experiencing something great, which could have been extremely imperfect compared to what other people are doing. That they say comparison is the thief of joy. Anyways, my whole goal with starting this podcast was to simply just get started. And there is a critic in my brain that wants everything to be perfect about how this is going to go. But I think I should just be happy to experience the journey and the development of what I envision in my head. It all can't be perfect at once. So I think just getting started, the best thing I can do. And that is what we were discussing in the very beginning. And as Mike began to talk, I knew it was going to be something great, a lot of wisdom. And that is how we kick off this podcast, Mike responding to my comment. Let's do it.
So, instead, just do it. The perfection is not, it might happen, whatever perfection might be in your mind, but if you don't do it, then you've completely failed, basically, if you don't do it. And I think that's a struggle with everything you do. I can pick 10 things right now that I'm just not doing, that I overthink. I'm like, oh, I want it to be good. I want it to be perfect. It's like, you still got to remind yourself, well, if you don't do it at all, that's a complete failure.
What is something that you aren't doing at the moment, but you need to be doing? I know you're a pretty disciplined guy.
I'm at a big, crossroad in my life with where I'm living, the businesses I have, spreading my time really far apart in the city of Cleveland. And so I know this is a phase of time where it's like, okay, I got to hit pause on a lot of things, because pause is fine as long as you plan the pause. If you plan to do something over here, and you don't achieve it, then that's one thing. But if you plan on being like, you know what, that's got to be on hold. That's got to be on hold because I got to focus on these things over here. So I got a lot of things on pause with business stuff and, just making sure everybody that we currently have, customers, clients, is very satisfied right now and not especially interested in bringing in brand new business and taking on new projects and things like that. So I'm moving again. And so once I move, did I tell you this? I'm moving back to Independent. I'm moving back in town from North Ridgeville to Independence.
Okay, you went from Brecksville to
I went from Broadview Heights to North Ridgeville.
Okay.
And that's a hike, man. On Mondays and Wednesdays, I think I have 3.5 hours of driving. And I have a new baby, so 4 months old. And I underestimated how much I really wanted to be around her and my family. And so I didn't know how I'd feel about that. And so I know now I want to be around them much more. And so the only way that's going to happen is you got to be closer to the center of your world, meaning work, family, your immediate family, extended family, all the different places that you have to go in the week, concerts that you you'll go to, restaurants you like. You got to be in the center of all of that. And if you're not, it's a lot of wasted time listening to podcasts in the car. And it gets to a point, I'm at the about 1 year mark, and I've listened to almost everything I wanted to listen to. There's plenty of content out there, but I can only listen to so much stuff. And so
that's where I got with this. I'm listening to all these people who I get great information from, but it's like, I want to be having these conversations.
Yeah.
Or in front of people I want to talk to. So that's how we ended up.
Yeah. Cool.
So let's kick it off. Here with Mike Soster, and you are a entrepreneur, you're a fitness enthusiast, business owner, and I consider you a good friend of mine. So I'm
Thank you.
glad to have you here. And I touched on you being a business owner. I think most people know that you own Functions of Life and Shred Fitness downtown. One thing that I would like to know is how you got started. I was told that once you were in a basement before you were in
Yeah, I think
industrial warehouse with Functions of Life.
I feel like a lot of small businesses have a similar story where they started in their basement or a metaphorical basement or whatever it may be, like Apple or whatever. But I did start in a basement at one point. But, I went in the military. I was in the military 6 years. I got out. I felt free. I went to East Carolina University and finished my degree there. I applied for internships, and it turns out that I got a really, really good one because they like the military experience that not a lot of college grads have. And so
Air Force, right?
Air Force, yep. I did '02 to '08. And so from there, I went to San Diego. And on day one, I met Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers and Sean Merriman. And it's like, all right, we're in the trenches with these guys and they're training. This is their mini camp, I guess, prior to meeting with their team. And it was around May, June. And so I was like, what the heck am I doing? I'm training, NFL Super Bowl MVP Drew Brees and, some of my favorite athletes I watch on TV. This is crazy. But I quickly realized that, you're a little starstruck at first, but, that wears off because you think about, okay, what's my job here? And so it was a great experience. I learned what it takes to be in the training world with some high-level athletes, but then we also trained little kids. We trained high school athletes, and we trained the moms and dads, and adults in that community. So
who was the connector that got you into that opportunity?
Yeah, it was the admissions office, or I'm sorry, like my advisor.
Yeah.
At East Carolina, they connected me with Todd Durkin, is the business owner out there. And I didn't know too much about Todd, but I soon found out how big this guy was and the direction that he's going. And so when you're young, you figure out your identity in fitness, and you figure out, or you should at least. And if you're just out there focused on, okay, can I make some really good money or something, or how can I want to train celebrities or something, it's like, well, what's your philosophy on training? Like let's say you did meet some of these people that you want to train, apparently. What's the direction you're going to take them? Are you just going to react to something that they say, be like, oh yeah, I can do that. I can, sure, fat loss in 6 weeks or whatever. It's like, okay, well, what's your method of it? Are you trying to put people in 30-minute sessions, 60-minute sessions? Are you doing group sessions? Are you doing bigger classes? Are you focused more on nutrition coaching? Are you focused more on motivation? Am I going to text these people every day? You have to really figure out your identity with that. And usually a college grad, as much as they think they have an identity with that, they got a long ways to go. But every step of the way, you think I almost haven't figured out here. It's like, well, so meeting Todd and a lot of the employees that he has at Fitness Quest 10 in San Diego, really helped figure out what the identity was. He put me in one of his mentorship programs, and I sat down for 3 or 4 days with bunch of guys that I still talk to this day. And it's like, okay, we have 4 hours here. If you were to create a business, what would it be? And why? And why do you want to create a business? And what's the name? And what's your mission? What's your values? Do you have a credo? Do you have, what solidifies the foundation of this business? I sat down next to a guy named Anthony Trucks on this side. And on this side, a guy named Hank Ebling. And everything that we came up with on that day stuck with us the next 15 years, which is crazy.
Is it all different for each of you?
Oh yeah, I mean,
maybe similarities.
Yeah, Anthony was a Pittsburgh Steelers NFL player that was, I guess, retired, but he has a fitness business and he did very well for himself. I think he sold his business and everything. And Hank is a guy in Chicago. He does small group, semi-private group training, and very, very good with customer service. And anyone that's been in business that long, they're doing something right. And so he's a good guy to check out. His business is H4. He's got 2 locations out there. But everything we came up with that day, I mean, we sat down and they're like, okay, think, what is your business name? I don't know. It's like, okay, well, I want you to write down 15 words that resonate with you and see what would be your business name and why. And so I'm like, well, the typical person would be, this is, Mike Soster Fitness or whatever. It's like, well, Fitness Quest 10 isn't Todd Durkin Fitness. It's Fitness Quest 10 because it's not about you. So I never believed in having a name that's about you. So it's never going to be Mike Soster Fitness because, you know, I'd rather have a system that we follow instead of, hey, follow in my footsteps. How's Mike Soster Fitness going to do when I'm 75 years old? I don't know. Functions of life, which is what we came up with, could do very well at that. It can be timeless, so we solidified our mission, our values. Now those things change over time. You adjust those things. But so I wrote these all in a notebook and I took notes every day. I took notes. I can get my notebook out and I can tell you what I did on day 4 with Drew Brees and my thoughts. I put my thoughts off to the side and we're talking pages. I never did that before. And it paid off because I can look back on every single day I was there at Fitness Quest 10 and I can see what I was doing. Some days I'd train Brittany Breeze, his wife. Some days I would babysit his kids and I'd write in there, well, guess I'm not training Drew today. Looks like I'm babysitting his kids. It's all good, whatever. But those are the things you go through. And so I read all Todd's books. I watched all his DVDs at night. I mean, this was my internship. It's like time to dive in. And so not everybody takes those opportunities seriously. And I was like, you know what? I did okay in the military. I loved what I did and everything. I decided to leave that path. I didn't go to college. I don't have anything that ever resonated with me deeply in my life. So now that I'm so connected to this and I'm actually good at it, I got great grades in college and I was a little bit older than some of the other kids because I was in the military. And so people saw me as a leader in the classroom and things like that. I'm like, well, I can really run with this. And I did because I saw a path to my future and I didn't know what it meant or where I was going with it, but I saw a path. And so I dove in real hard with it. Eventually, I did not stay in San Diego. That's a tough place to make a living.
Hear that once?
I considered it, but I didn't even apply for the position. I don't even know if I would have been hired on. I'd like to think I could have been, but it didn't entice me. There's a lot of celebrity type people out there and everything, and I miss my family. I was away from my family for so long, and I'm the oldest out of many, many cousins and brothers and sisters. And so I felt like I abandoned them in some way. Over time, this feeling has set in. And so eventually I was like, you know what? My internship's over. I got to get knee surgery as well. I'm going to head back home. Maybe I'll do my master's or something, but I need to figure out where I'm going to be at, and I always said, I lived in Okinawa, Japan. That's like Hawaii. It's tropical. It's very nice. And North Carolina, I lived in Texas. I lived in all these nice, warm places and everything. I'm like, you know what? I can travel there anytime I want to. I'm missing out on birthdays, soccer games, graduations, all these things back home. And I miss my family. And I know my family misses me as well. And so the right thing to do is to be back home. And I'll figure it out from there. And so I went back home. I got a job here and there. I realized that these people did not share the same philosophy that I created for myself in my mind at that internship in the last couple of years. And so eventually, if your philosophy is not the same, if your mindset is not the same as the people that you're working alongside, you quickly decide that you need to go a different direction. So I left one business, I went to another. That was a little bit better, but I still realized, in fitness, yeah. So and then that place was my last stop before I realized, I'm like, you know what? I have to do this on my own because I don't share the same philosophy as some of these other people. And some of these owners that I'm working for, they see dollar signs everywhere they go. And I'm like, you're seeing a dollar sign when you need to see a human being in front of you. And the more you can help these human beings in front of you, your clients, the money will follow. You take care of them no matter what. And at the beginning, you really take care of them. You sacrifice a lot of things in your life, relationships, going out places, missing events and things like that because, you agreed to train this person at 7 p.m. on this night or whatever, and you don't cancel. A lot of trainers cancel on their clients. It's like, well, I never did that. I never believed in that. And although you make those sacrifices in the long run, those people realize that, you are there for them and anything they need, which their needs aren't even that crazy, but you're there for them, whatever, nutrition, fitness, whatever. And so it eventually led to me being like, you know what, maybe I can train people in their homes. And I like training kids too. So this is the big break, I guess I had. I went to Edgewater Beach and I'm like, you know what, I didn't have a lot of money. And so probably nothing. And I bought PVC pipes at Home Depot. And did I ever tell you this story?
No,
Oh.
I've heard of I don't know the story.
Yeah.
I've heard of the PVC pipes though. So
Yeah, PVC pipe. I mean, you can make your own equipment. It's not pretty, but if you're starting out and if you got nothing, well, you're working with kind of nothing. So PVC pipes are about $2 at Home Depot at the time. And you have to buy the caps, which I was pissed off about because the caps are just as much as the whole pipe. I'm like, yeah, so it's like $6. I go there and I'm like, if I fill this pipe up with sand, I can make this pipe 22 pounds. Excuse me. And if I can fill this pipe with sand, which is a little bit more narrow, it can be 12 pounds. So I can create all these weights. And it looks stupid, but I just got to make it look pretty, as much as I can. So I go there, I'm filling these pipes, and this guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, man, do you have anything I can jimmy my lock with over here? I'm like, he looked like a bum. And I'm just like, I don't know if I'm in a safe situation right now. My car's right here. I don't know if he thinks I have valuables, but I don't. I'm like, no, I don't have anything. I'm sorry. I really can't help you. And he's like, you got anything in your car? Like anything I can just, get in my car? I'm really creative with how I can get in. I'm like, what's this guy mean? So I'm like, look, all I have is this. And I had a little umbrella. He's like, can I get that umbrella? He's like, do you mind if I buy it off you? I'm like, you can just have it, man. Like, it's probably like $4. I might have got it for free. And he did all this stuff with this umbrella. I'm not even paying attention. I'm filling up these pipes. And he somehow gets in his car with an umbrella. I don't have these skills, So he comes back to me. He's like, yeah, sorry about your umbrella, but I'm going to pay you for it. I'm like, okay, that's whatever. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm filling up these pipes with sand. I was faking it until I was making it at this point. So I would tell people that I'm a youth fitness trainer. I do all this stuff. You really got to make it seem like you're bigger than you really are. And what I was making it seem like is I was much bigger than I really was. But I believed in it. And so I said, I'm a youth trainer and, I train kids. He's like, no kidding. He's like, I have 12 baseball teams. I'm like, what? Are you looking for training? I would love to have the opportunity to come in. I'll do a session for each team for free. As long as you don't mind, I take a little video. I got to promote myself and this and that. And he agreed to it. And so his team signed on for twice a week. And at the time, I said $60 for the session. That's pretty low for like team training. But for me, it was the most I was making in a single session, So I traveled all the way to Broadview Heights. I would train the baseball team. I would train another team. And then I would leave and I'd come back the next day and train these other teams, So I took a video of my first time doing it. And there's a video on my YouTube, personal YouTube, I think. Yeah. And it's of that first session. And it was a great session. It was well run. Everything that I've learned, I put into the session. And these dads and coaches, they're like, we gotta have this guy come in here all the time. And to each kid, it was about $4 a kid for me to come every session. So they're like, this is worth it. So long story short, I did some of those things. I made a little extra money to make myself think I'm getting somewhere. And this same guy, his name's Mike James, and he was the leader of Diamond Elite Baseball. And he said, hey, do you want to get this building with me? So I'm like, yeah, and if you look at my numbers and everything, this was probably not a good idea for me to do, but I didn't know any better. Probably a blessing in disguise that I didn't know the numbers very well. So I'm going to go out there. I have no clients except this baseball team. And little did I know, after I, came for the first month, baseball is now out of season and these kids play other sports. So I'm not training anybody. I'm like, Mike, you told me these teams were going to trade with me. Like, I was counting on this, and now I owe you $1,200 rent. So I had to be like, I got to train adults. I got to get back into the fitness world because this isn't going to work.
And this is after you bought the facility.
We were renting together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were renting together. So
the same space you have now?
No.
No.
Next door.
Gotcha.
This space was only about 2,000 square feet. And he would do baseball with his kids and I would do fitness. And I got my name out there and anybody that walked in the door, I'm like, hey, come in, like, do you want to work out? Like, I was just like, and I had my first person that walked in. Her name was Anna Lucas, and a lot of people. And she walked in. I'm like, hey, I'll give you a deal, like $100 a month. You just got to bring all your friends. And she's like, okay. And she tells this story differently these days. She's like, it was this good-looking guy, and I came in, and he just said he'll train me as much as he wants. And she's like, and it's kind of funny. She's funny, but she brought all our friends, and she said she'd bring 10, and she might have brought 6. And then those same people, I said, hey, if you guys sign up with me, some unlimited plan, and bring all your friends, we can get this going. And we got it going. And so I was making rent, and I was making an additional $1,000 in the month. And I was just like, I can not only eat, I can go to a restaurant for the first time in a long time. I'm talking years. I didn't go to a restaurant. And if I did, it's because a girlfriend that I had at the time would pay for it. I would go to bars and I would not get drinks. I mean, I was living on probably $1,300 a month. And thankfully, a good friend of mine was charging me very little rent at the time. That's the only way I could, get by. But so this kind of snowballed into some things. Oh, I missed the basement part. But when I lived in Lakewood, I trained some people in my basement, some adults. And that went well enough to where
Was this before the children on the baseball team?
yeah, that was right before that.
Okay.
So that went for a little while, but it's the basement. And
Yeah.
but
Were you
so
living with your
I
parents?
was living in that house with my friend Dave Crovu. And so yeah, then that kind of snowballed into, okay, what's my philosophy? I believe in good customer service. I believe I don't show up late for sessions. I don't end them early. I give them a fair price. They pay on time. So there's rules on their end of it too. I give them the best training they've ever had in their life, and I motivate them enough to eat better and start to make some changes for themselves. And if you have 20 people and you help 10 of them make some very serious changes, they're not leaving you. This is the most fit they've been in several years. And so all they would like to do is be a raving fan and talk about you. 20 members turned into 80, and then 80 turned into 120. When I say members, I mean, if somebody is a visitor that month, I count that as a member at the time. So I ran some classes, I did some personal training. I had very crappy equipment. I look back and I can't believe people even came to me, but it goes to show it's not exactly the equipment. It's not the facility. It's what kind of value you're giving to the people. And at the time, that's all I focused on. How can I give them the best value? And then over time, I would respectfully say, I've been doing this a while. I'm pretty extended. I was giving you guys some pretty cheap rates. So some people I'd be like, out of fairness, I need to bump this up a little bit so I can make some things happen and make this gym amazing, And then we ended up moving next door to a bigger facility. Dominic Del Corpo, he was a landscape guy in Broadview Heights. He gave me a really good deal on a place. I got a 3-year lease. And then from there, I learned about employees. And that's a whole nother world. So that's great that I can bet on myself. But I mean, employees is a much different world.
Today's episode is brought to you by our unofficial sponsor, Functions of Life. Functions of Life is owned by my guest, Mike Soster, and it is located in Broadview Heights, Ohio. I highly recommend checking out Functions of Life if you are looking to improve your physical fitness and just be surrounded by a good group of individuals who care about you and your health. Thanks.
Right. And you talked a little bit about doing it for more than yourself, doing it for the client earlier in the conversation. One thing I've also heard you say in past conversations with me is how much you care about your staff. And not just them showing up to be employees for your clients, but you really care about who they're
Well, I'll tell you where that came from.
setting themselves up for that they actually not just a
Yes.
So tell me about
I'll tell you where that came from because I was once an employee somewhere. And I mean, like most would have been. But I know how it's like working for somebody else that, you're in this system of a gym that it's not completely your philosophy, but maybe you adopted it and maybe you're going with that. They need a lot in the fitness world. They need a lot of things. Number one, they need sufficient pay. And if you don't get sufficient pay, then you're done after 3 to 5 years because you can only live on $30,000 for so long. And you're going to really tough it out because you love your job and everything. But at some point, unless you get a second job or something, if you're only making that amount, that's not a valid option for you. You have to live. And so I told myself with the employees that I have, we are going to be sitting down, meeting about, what are our personal goals? What are our team goals together? How can we mesh those? And how can we make it to where the things that you need and you want in your life, you're able to achieve? I never had somebody sit me down like that. Nobody cared enough. But when I had somebody that comes in that applies to Functions of Life and I'm like, you're taking a chance on me and my business, I'll take a chance on you. And so I'm going to make sure that they're in a very fair situation for as long as they're with me. It should always be a very fair situation. And it's not always like that, not just in fitness, but other businesses for sure. And if somebody approaches me and they say, hey, Mike, I've done this, I've been with you this amount of time. I've really focused on doing this, and this for you and your business. I would really like it if we can talk about a possibility of me getting a raise. I'll sit down with any person for that conversation. Now, there's going to be some things we talk about to negotiate what that would be, but there's always room for leveling up for people that are working around me. So now at this point, some of these trainers, they might not have the most outrageous goals, but some of them do. And if you do, I'm on board with you, and they have to write them out and they have to give them to me. So we have all written out goals, and this isn't just financial or career driven, it's like there's different categories, many different categories of where they want to be, because it's not just your paycheck, and it's not just, and sit on your couch, and it's how do you feel in that moment about your life? It's everything. Your relationships, your family, your legacy. Do you have a legacy? Are you creating some type of security blanket for yourself? Are you, oh, yes, of course, finances. What type of material possessions do you want in your life? What kind of car do you want to drive? If you can draw all that out in your life, that puts you in a position where you're pointing in the direction where you want to go. And it's a lot easier to get to that, A to B, to that place when you're pointing right at it. And so I definitely try to get them on board with that. I care about each one of them in big ways. And some of them really know that. It takes them some time because they might have been burned by previous employers and stuff like that. But deep down, they know we're all looking out for each other too. And that actually creates a great culture as well. So that's a whole other thing. I like when they buy houses and buy cars and the necessities in life, but I like that they can go to restaurants, enjoy themselves. They can take a date out somewhere at a very nice place. And things that I was never able to do. I had a rusted up Escape that, yeah, I wish I had a nicer car or something different. And
Not you from A to B.
it did. But if they value a brand new car that, they're now able to afford, I love that they can do that. Or they can put a $20,000 down payment on a house. I couldn't do that before. So I get a lot out of, okay, I'm creating employment for this many people that did not, each one of them was previously not exactly in the greatest place because they were at fitness businesses that, you're not a person, you're a number. How much can you make this company? Some of these big companies. I'm like, well, yeah, you do have to think about that. Any small business has to think about the bottom line and like how much you're bringing in, but you are way more than a number. And so I like that they have their own creativity at the gym. They can train their people kind of how they want to, as long as we kind of fit in these parameters that we do have for how we operate.
How many staff do you have, right?
At Functions of Life, we have 8 of us, and then at Shred, it's run a little bit differently, but there's about 6 of them there. And so 8 is a great number for where we're at for Functions of Life.
Yeah.
And so if we had more, I'd have a harder time getting that person to full time. And so it would be somebody that was more part time. And then also we train a lot of people. So it's a space issue as well. So yeah.
Is expansion ever in your head? Not necessarily on the
Yeah.
many locations, but just in terms of functions.
Yeah. We tried to build a building about 3 years ago, and that did you know about this?
No.
And I learned the hard way of why you can't just dive into something like that. And we make good money and everything. I'm like, there's no way we can't not do this. Like, it seems like the numbers add up great, and I'm very good at analyzing the numbers,
Were you
spreadsheets for everything.
or did it a little bit of self-education?
When I never wanted to be broke again. I remember what it felt like being broke for a solid 5 years or maybe longer. You get used to being broke too, and it's not really a good mindset, and it's kind of scary because you need some security in your life. But once I started making a little bit of money, I was tracking everything, budgeting, business budgeting, personal budgeting, and I was making it to where I need to know the numbers very, very clearly. And that led to that part of myself I didn't realize I had in me, to where now I'm very good at knowing if you change this, this, and this, I know exactly how those numbers change. And so now I help other fitness businesses with their numbers and budgeting and knowing, okay, if you get rid of this and this, and maybe put more emphasis on this, you would do better. So yeah, that's.
I'll say firsthand, I studied finance at college, but my own personal financial situation didn't get better until I saw reality in front of me on a spreadsheet, and I tracked every penny for a year,
Yeah.
Prior to that, even if I saved, it would always just end up out of the bank. But I want to rewind. You talked about the building that you're going to build.
Yeah.
What was the challenge in that didn't
Well,
happen? Keep speaking.
so if you have 7 people involved in that process, and we're talking big numbers here. This was a $3.5 million building. And if all 7 people, or maybe I'll just say 5 or 6, lie to you a little bit, or stretch the truth, or make make you think that you can do this or whatever, and they don't give you all the information, but they give you like 80%. You go down this path where you start paying some people, and you get to a point where you didn't realize there was a dead end here when they knew there was probably a dead end there. And it got to the thing that held us up is there was an appraisal of the project. Appraisal came in more than $1 million under, which means the only way you can continue is the bank now wants $1 million cash up front, $1 million cash up front, So I had some money saved up. I didn't have this kind of money, and if I was able to get that, that means I need to give up some equity, and it was a whole different world. And also, it's not a good deal. What if you go down this road and you put in $1 million cash and the market goes down, or all of a sudden you're stuck in a situation? What if your memberships go down and you have this $25,000 payment and you have no money left? I mean, you got a HELOC on your house and you gave up all your cash, you took out your retirement. It would not have been a good idea. And so I nixed the project, and it scared the shit out of me. And this is coming from somebody that did some pretty good business in the last 10 years. And I'm like, if I'm not able to do this, what fitness business can? If they're not some corporate, 50 location place or something. But couldn't believe it. And no bank believed that any fitness business was good to, I guess, invest in or give a loan to. And so the project did not continue. And it might have been for the best. I don't really know how that would have played out. But
It was written that way.
but then you step back and you ask yourself, why was I going to do that? In my mind, it was for the people. We can serve so many more people doing that. We would have more security for the trainers. We would attract so many more people for them to do training with. And then I crunch the numbers. I'm like, man, I think if I do the numbers right, everything all good?
Yeah, you're good.
If I do the numbers right, I mean, it looks like I might, after a year or two, I might make $400,000 a year or something. That does nothing for me. My life doesn't change. My life hasn't changed. I mean, I've been able to purchase a house and, upgrade my house, and, I can have a newer vehicle now. But outside of that, my life doesn't really change. So why do I need to put myself in a situation where I need to make such a significant amount of money, but risk everything? That's the big part. The risk everything. I don't. And that's actually risking their jobs as well. So I realized that I'm not somebody that is driven by a higher income after a certain amount. I have enough of what I need, Now, I'm not saying I'm not ambitious with that or something, but remember those categories of things we talked about. Your income, your family, your relationships, your friends, your legacy, material things, whatever. Under that financial part of it, a higher income was not, it didn't fit into anything that I needed. I only vacation 2 to 3 times a year, and we're not talking big vacations. And I have no desire to do a 10-day trip to, Peru or something. So it didn't line up. And I realized this after this all fell through. So now I can focus on the people, focus on my trainers, and there's a lot of internal stuff that you can do and make functions of life where it's at perfect, whatever that might mean. But
You mentioned it was a big risk there.
yes,
What do you believe is the biggest risk you've taken in your life?
officially starting FWell, but
Yeah.
I didn't know how much of a risk it was. Like, I was giving up a lot of clients coming to my house, and I was making an income, enough to live and maybe save a bit. But moving out to Broadview Heights and actually starting this thing, I didn't have clients lined up. I didn't have a marketing plan. I was just banking on, if I start this place, people are going to walk in. That's not how it works. And I learned fast that's not how it works. But I already had the place. I was renting for a year. Either I figure this out right now, or I don't know, maybe I'll sell insurance or something. I don't know what happens when all your dreams fall through. So that was probably my biggest risk, is moving out to Broadview Heights and actually starting it. But I didn't know how much of a risk it actually was. I mean, I'm very thankful I didn't know.
Did you make a profit your first year, or did it take a few years?
My tax returns, I know the numbers, the first 4 years. The first year was technically in my house, because that's where I officially started. I'm like, you know what, I'm incorporating myself. I'm, being official. And I made $13,000 in that year. And to me, and now there's business expenses too. And and I had a very low cost of living. And then I moved out to Broadview Heights, and on that tax return it says $8,000. And then I think it went down. I think it was like $6,000. Now, I had a lot of ways to make this all work. Then it was $44,000. And so, I mean, it took a while for things to really snowball because I was putting back into the business
You're
too.
reinvesting.
I was. And I was, because anything extra, I believed in this. And so anything extra, I'm not buying anything for myself. This is going back into the business because I believed in what it would become. And I didn't exactly know exactly what that vision was, but
Has it become what you thought it would become?
it's bigger than I ever imagined. Yeah.
Okay.
So, excuse me. I didn't really have an idea of what this would look like at this point. I just imagined I'm going to train 100 people, and I'm going to have one employee and they're going to train 100 people and we're going to do this together and we're going to make it real cool. We're going to take a bunch of videos and, we're going to, everyone's going to be fit in Robbie Heights then. Well, 200 people, right? I think we have about 3,500 visits a month now at Functions of Life. So that equates to about 650 members, a lot of semi-private personal training, classes, youth services. If somebody walks in with their family, we can direct them into many different ways. And there's not a lot of competition that's doing something similar to what we're doing.
I even think with the youth involved, it seems very fun oriented while at the same time instilling healthy habits that
I mean, they know they can come in and they're going to really enjoy their workout. They're going to have a good time. They might play a little bit or whatever, but they still know we're serious about certain things. And so if we can, we've been there 13 years now. And so some kids that I've had when they just started out, when they were 6 years old, they're now in college. Some of these athletes that have come through our system with strength training, they're some of the best lifters on their teams in high school, in college, and because they had that foundation of it. So right now, it's kind of cool for us to see that because, would they have been the best lifter anyway? I don't know. I don't think so, but I'm not giving ourselves, full credit for anything. These kids put in the work, but it does show that they're the ones that know what they're doing, and not just in high school and college, the rest of their life. They have these skills now that many, many people do not have. How do you work out? How do I take care of my body? How do I learn about nutrition? We teach them at 15 years old. So, and
so important.
It's important. And you're not just helping them, you're helping their, if they have a future spouse or kids or whatever. I mean, they have this knowledge for life. And so we love seeing situations like that now that we've been there for so long.
I want to rewind. You mentioned living in San Diego. Prior to that, you were in the Air Force for 6 years, correct?
Yep.
Yesterday was 9/11. You said you started serving in 2002. Did 9/11 have an impact? Yeah.
Our country, for those that remember, was very patriotic during that time. Yeah. I was a senior in high school, and we all remember where we're at and everything, but what you don't forget is also the feeling that you had about our country. And you learned, for me, being that age, I was 17 years old, I learned what patriotism really was, like what it felt like deep down. And you're pissed that somebody has the capability of doing that to our country. Because at first, on TV, I just see these buildings going down. You don't know 3,000 people died or will die. Once you start grasping all that, me and my best friend at the time were like, I think we're going in the military, man. What else? I didn't know if college was right for me. I had a 2.9, maybe a 3.0, but I didn't think that was good at the time. I didn't know. I'm like, maybe this is a better option for me for many reasons. So I had about 4 or 5 reasons that got me in that direction. 3 months later, I officially, signed a commitment saying I'm going to go in the military. And then 6 months after that, 9 months after that, because on September 11th of the following year, I was on an airplane going to San Antonio, entering the Air Force 1 year later.
That was your first,
that was my first day.
Okay.
Yeah. And, the country was very different then. I mean, people were wanting to really go in the military and make some type of impact. Now, you didn't really know what that would be. I knew I didn't want to do Marines and Army. but I also didn't exactly know what Air Force was. I just like, I'm going to work on F-15s. That sounds fun. That sounds like I can create an identity with that. And I did for 6 years. And
You
went
did
to,
end up working on it,
yeah,
right?
that was avionics. And I never tried so hard with academics in my life. And so I learned about the F-15, and you go through schooling for about 9 months and you go off to your first duty station. So I went from Texas to North Carolina. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to be in 6 years or 20, but if whatever the case, I need to travel. I need to take advantage of this situation. So I put in for England and Japan, and I ended up getting Japan. So after 3 years at North Carolina, I got shipped off to Okinawa, Japan. I was there for 3 years, and that's when I realized how much I missed my family too. And so,
How big was that base there? How many?
huge. Kadena Air Base in Okinawa is the biggest base there, but there's a lot of military. There's about 9 bases.
Are we thinking like more than 100,000?
I think there's 100,000 on the island.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. It's 60 miles long by 5 miles wide, and I think there was 100,000 military on that island. And so, I mean, there was a significant size base, Kadena. And when you're on base, you feel like an American. I mean, it's Americanized, but then you end up getting a house off base, and you take in the culture, and I mean, you take it in. You go to a restaurant, you're not speaking English. You can, but they will treat you much better if you speak Japanese.
What do you think the military, or specifically the Air Force, taught you about discipline and responsibility?
I think I didn't have any before I went in. I don't think that's really a fault of my parents or anything. It's just like I was being a little brat for a
Yeah.
while, and I didn't take to the things that they were trying to teach me. Because I mean, I look back now and I thank my parents for. I'm like, hey, thank you for doing this. I was just not. It wasn't even the friends I was with. I was just, very average high school guy. And so when I went, I learned what the real structure behind like being a working individual and showing up on time and showing up and giving something your best and also not getting in trouble. And, like I'm an adult now. I'm out here by myself. Ever since day one in the military, ain't nobody got my back out here. I mean, yeah, they got your back, but it's just you out there. And if you fail at what you're doing, then next man up, So, it definitely gave me structure in my life. And looking back, I feel like it was so long ago, but that's all I've ever known now. Like I almost feel like I've been an adult more than I was a kid at this point in my life. I'm turned 40, and so now that's more so what I know. It's uh I'm the guy that writes his goals down at the beginning of the month and things like that, and I go back and I look at them and I adjust them and things like that, and I only know that. But that's also from Todd Durkin in San Diego. Like I mean, military helped me get that structure, but it's guys that like Todd and people that worked for him that put you on, not just a healthy path, but a progressive path to where you want to be.
What type would you say that the athletes you were working around, and even the trainers and any of Todd's guys, was there a high performer type of mentality and behaviors that similar amongst all of them?
When you're around somebody, a mentor like Todd, and some of his, let's just say his top 3 people around him, they live their daily life a certain way to where when that's something right in front of you, you know what you can emulate now. And you try to, but it's like you realize they've been doing this a long time. They have habits that have formed over time to where like you don't just wake up one day and be like, I'm gonna be like this guy. It's like, no, you gotta get used to a lot of those things. I mean, and it's living your life with that philosophy
Feel
as
like
well.
it takes
It's
discipline, consistency.
and then it becomes more natural. Guys like him, I mean, the way he lives his life, it's got to be very natural at this point. It's like Jocko Willink when he wakes up at whatever time, he takes a picture of his watch every time,
Yeah.
I don't know, 4:15 or something. That guy has some serious habits. And so you see this and you're like, okay, time to change some of these things about myself.
What would you say is one of the most difficult habits that you've had to cut out of your life, and possibly even
The people around you are going to want to enjoy themselves and have fun and be comfortable. And the more you stray away from the things that, I mean, don't enjoy yourself here and there, but in moderation. Because if you're just looking for that comfort or you're looking to have fun or, you're just like, can't wait for Friday, Saturday night, and celebrate. You can find that fun in certain places, don't get me wrong, but I mean, you have to have that balance with it all. And so those people are going to want to take you away from the direction that you're trying to take yourself. And you just have to know how to say those words no.
No.
You have to say no way more in life. Do I want to buy this car versus this car? No. Can I afford this house? No. You have to tell yourself, and you can't just try to be living some big life and you're not, but you're not. The more you need to be acting broke so you can be rich one day. When I say rich, not just money, like, wealthy in all those categories in your life. Well, you got to live below your means. And if you're somebody that's out here acting rich, which I see it too much, they're acting big, they're acting all bad and everything, you're just going to be broke in all those categories in your life. And so invest in those categories. You got to really think about those things, because the people around you, they're going to try to take you away from the things that you should be doing. But if you begin of the week, you write down, hey, I tell myself I'm going to do this, this, and this, you got to stick to that as much as you can. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, especially when you have a girlfriend, a wife, kids, you add that in, and it's, because then you're torn. I could sit there with my 4-month-old on my lap all day long. We're doing nothing. I'm just watching her go, ee. I could do that all day, but I have to realize I have to have balance with all this. And the only way I can take care of them is make sure I make a living and things like that. And so yeah.
Speaking of your daughter, 4 months old, you just said?
Yes.
Yeah. You have a tattoo on your arm that says Courage to Grow. I think you have a pretty interesting story behind that, right?
Yeah, I think
Your first tattoo?
It is, yeah. And so Courage to Grow is actually from an album from Revolution, and it's a reggae band. I love them, but it's a song that they have. I believe it's the name of their album too. But it means so much more than just a couple words, So you have to wake up every morning and you have to decide that you want to progress yourself. And if you don't, whatever, that's your life, that's fine. But if you want to get over here, you have to make a conscious decision of that. It's got to be proactive. It doesn't just happen passively. You're not just like, man, I really wish I could get this job, or I really want to move to Nashville one day. Well, you got to put some plans in place, and you got to not have the fear to move forward, to have the courage to grow for yourself in all those categories that we talked about. And so immediately after getting this tattoo, a couple weeks later, we realized we were pregnant. This is my girlfriend of 6 months or something.
Yeah.
I love her. But we didn't expect that. And I think a previous version of myself would have been like, oh, what are our options here? And I quickly realized I don't have those options in my mind anymore. Or even if I did, I don't even know. I was never in that situation. And so she said, we're pregnant. I'm like, what? Looks like we're having a baby. And to quickly shift my mindset in my life, because I've always told myself that's great that I do fitness. And I know when I sat down, you're like, Mike Soster, owner of Functions of Life. And, everyone has their master statuses. When someone thinks of you, what's the first thing they think of? What's your identity?
Yeah.
And nothing about business or anything is ever what my identity was meant to be. And I think a lot of people are the same way. My identity is that I'm going to be a dad. Or, even previous to knowing about Isabel, that's what you want to do in your life. And so, yeah, I'm going to work. I'm going to have a gym and whatever. I'm going to be friends to all these people. I'm going to be a brother. I'm going to be a uncle and this and that. But your master status should be dad. And so everything has to revolve around that after that time. And it did. And then when it actually happens, it really does. Then you start to realize what that even means. And so, because you think you know what it means, but you got to wait till it actually happens to know what it really means and how you feel about everything. So number one, you're a dad, you're a family man, and it's tough to have a business with all of that because you get torn in different directions. And all of a sudden golf is not that important anymore. Don't get me wrong. It's very important.
That balance.
It's all about balance. And you got to have those times where you're away kind of in nature and doing your own thing. But makes you a better dad. But everything changed for me when she was on the way. And so I became more religious, way more religious.
I remember having it. We sat down table a year ago around this time. It's when I saw your tattoo.
Yeah.
You let me know that questions I asked you then. I'm like, are you a spiritual guy? And you're like, yeah, so I got my beliefs. They come and go. But what has changed spiritually in you since having a
You think about
a lot.
you think about the morality of the world and what's directing the things that we're doing. And you're watching what people are doing, and you're watching the news and things like that. What is directing our morality? And there's answers to that. I mean, it's our family, it's our friends, it's our faith, and it's, coworkers, anyone around you is directing what your morality would be. And it's also what we think is right and wrong. So if somebody goes to a store and takes a candy bar and walks out, they're like, it's just a candy bar. The store makes a ton of money. That's not wrong. That's not wrong in their mind. So that can be a relative thing. I mean, you are breaking a law. And so that's a whole other thing. You have laws. But I was starting to become not okay with the world that my little girl is going to be in. And if our morality is so off right now, how can I bring a little girl into that world? And so I was searching for answers on how we determine how we should live our life and things like that. That led me to so many different pathways of, how did we create this child? How is any human being created? And it makes you really think about that and how amazing of a thing that is.
Existence.
The existence of mankind, of Earth, whatever. And so it was January 6th. I know the date. And it was a Saturday. And I was like, man, I feel weird. I feel like I need answers right now. I spent the whole day looking for answers, and I didn't know how to find them. And, what am I going to do? Like, I feel like it's like a religious thing, but what am I going to do? Like, try to understand the whole Bible right now and understand the interpretation and what it means to me and, how this relates to how I'm feeling, or because I knew it was like a religious thing. And I have a good friend, Dave. I train Dave. He's a pastor in Brook Park. And wait till Monday morning. I'm like, Dave, I got to talk to you. I know we're training right now, but like, do you have a couple minutes after our session? He's like, yeah. He always sticks around. And he's like, what's on your mind, Mike? And I'm like, Dave, something happened to me Saturday. I don't even know what it was. Could have been a panic attack. I don't know. But I need to talk about it, and you are the guy I need to talk to because I feel like it has a religious vibe to it, to where like I all of a sudden had a connection with power in some way. I'll just say that for right now, even though, and so I'll just say that for right now because I can't say I fully understood how I was feeling on that day. Dave's like, explain it to me. So I explained how I was feeling, and I was just like, I've been feeling like this. I've been looking for answers. I'm not okay with this. I've been watching a lot of these, And he's like, Mike, do you understand what January 6th was? I'm like, well, besides the storm in the Capitol, I'm like, besides that, it's my dad's birthday. He's like, okay, it's those things too, but it's the day of the revelation. I'm like, what is the day of the revelation? And he explained to me, and so I don't know the exact story of it, but I believe it has to do with some people that don't believe or, question the beliefs or whatever. This is the day that they did believe. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And that sent me down a whole other path.
Synchronistic, yeah.
And so I knew there was more to it for me there. And so call it coincidental, call it what you want, but I know what it was. And so then things started lining up for me. Like when I started to look for the interpretation of what this meant in my world and whatever, I'm like, all the answers that I have all the answers of the questions that I had were down a religious path there. And there's a lot to learn. And even though I grew up in the church and everything like that, there's a lot to learn. And it doesn't really end. So it's the first time I understood what people go to Bible study for. I'm like, I kind of get it. I was like, there's so much they have to learn about what happened and how we came to this point. And so,
You believe there's a soul out there experiencing Mike Soster as a human being?
a soul out there experiencing me.
Human being, yeah. Do you believe there's a soul beyond this?
Yeah, I believe, I now pray and I know what that means. I thought it used to be, oh, I really wish this would happen. I really pray that, this client doesn't leave us or whatever. I pray that this employee, really finds his direction or whatever. I learned that that's not what it is. That is not what prayer is. And
I do believe there is a big impact subconsciously with prayers of gratitude.
And there's a reason people would go to their knees to do that, or so, you are asking for forgiveness for, it's not really asking for anything but that. And so, but there's so much more for some people to learn about that, including myself. But at least when you're on a certain path and the direction with that, life has a lot more clarity to it. And I really enjoy knowing what direction that's going, because when I say I have these long drives every day, I'm either listening to Dave Ramsey, I love his podcast. They're kind of funny too.
I was gonna say, I feel like, man, if you want to feel good about your financial situation,
You know what? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is, because it gets a little crazy. And I listen to some guys that interpret the Bible, and they answer a lot of big questions that people have, which I'm still hung up on a couple of those questions. And I know I'll figure it out eventually. And I know people prior to me have figured that out in their own minds, and how they deal with human suffering, and how can we have a God that allows for this and that? But I mean, there's answers for this. You just work it out in your mind. It's not easy.
I agree.
It's not easy.
From my own personal experience, I'm still on a spiritual journey myself, but as I started to integrate more spiritual awareness and understanding over the past year, I kind of fell away from it for most of my 20s. But as I started to integrate it back, a lot of the world that I see on the outside started to become a lot better.
Mhm.
Don't get me wrong, we still see a lot of bad things, but
Yeah.
the way who I am to the outside world has started to become a lot better.
Yeah.
Understanding myself,
It puts things in
the
perspective.
material
I mean,
world that
there's a lot of people focused on themselves. The world should be more built around you focusing on other people around you. And Dave Matthews has a quote that's probably, I feel like if I get any scripture or anything on my body, it's something from Dave Matthews. And he has a song, and a part of the lyric is, if you give, you begin to live. And there's nothing more true than that, because what he's saying is stop trying to think about what you get out of something, and think about what you could give that person and that person and that person, and then see how you feel about that. That's your purpose in life, or that could be, if you go a religious direction, your purpose is to serve God. But, serving God, that could involve, what you're giving to people. So if things align with that more than anything, you are going down a very good path, because people are so focused on how much money they want and need, and the possessions they have. And
this could lead me into the next question. So I read a quote this week. It was in a newsletter, but it ended with, eventually you find enough. And what this person was talking about was, like, when it came to what you have or your relationships, if you have a partner or a husband and wife, and even in that relationship you find imperfections that say, oh, if I was with this other person, I'd have this, or if I had this car, it would have what my car doesn't have. But like, you just talk about, eventually, like, you just come to terms with
now,
what you value. And he's like, eventually you find enough in everything you have.
is he saying that people do find that, or he wishes they would find that? Because
He wishes they would.
Okay,
And
yeah.
he struggled in the past version of himself with, like, being in a relationship and be like, yeah, my girlfriend's amazing, but like, I could be missing out on this with another girlfriend, or missing out on this with living in a different city. But he's like, yeah,
grass is always
in
greener.
terms with, like, what I have right now, I find enough in, or I find enough in it.
If people feel like that, that's a good place to be.
So what my question is for you, as somebody who is very growth oriented, in a lot of the things they do, hey, I don't want to be complacent. At the same time, have you found enough in your life?
No, on some things I have not.
Okay.
Because me and Christy have only been together for what would seem like a short period of time, even though we have a child now and everything like that. We're not married yet. We have like a lot of growth to do, and we're probably gonna get, so there's that category of my life that, we have to find a deeper love between each other. I mean, we have a love for this child, and, her kid, Zoe, but that happens so fast. We have to find that deeper love for each other. And we know that comes with time too. You don't just, decide one day, I'm like, I love you. It's like, that is a gradual thing, that, like fine wine. There has to be some time involved there. And I don't know by personal experience. I know by the things I read. And, that's it. And other people I talk to. So what do I know? But I do believe that. And so I have not had enough of, I believe there's a deeper love between me and her. I believe there's a better relationship to be had with the people around me. Now that comes with, okay, if my big circle of people is 200 people, that's kind of too much. Your circle should not be 200 people. It needs to be about 100. And you have two circles. You have your bigger circle of maybe what you would call not quite acquaintances, closer than acquaintances.
I would even say a community.
Yeah, your people, to where you would go to great lengths for these people.
Yeah.
But then you have that smaller circle that you would do absolutely anything for those people. And if your circles are too big, you're spreading yourself too thin. Do we talk about this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
I've heard about it.
That's what that's about, a little bit. Because
Manson.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can't give a fuck about this person if you care too much about these people over here. That don't exactly matter. I mean, you have to keep your circle small so you can really give the people that deserve your attention the attention they
For sure. Yeah, like I know there's studies that have been done that say, like a core circle of about 6 individuals around you is any more than that is almost taking away from the good health that
yeah
people around you
yeah
have from a trust perspective, because the moment you add a 7th or 8th, you're taking away time from your wife, your parents, your children, your best friend.
I believe that. But it helps, going back to the power of saying no. If you know your two circles, you know when you can say no. Because if someone is asking you to do something and they're a little bit outside that big circle, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Thank you for the invite. I can't do that. I cannot come to your father's 60th birthday or something like that, because it's taking away from somebody in your circle. And so it helps in the long run. It's not easy. I'm speak about it as if I have it figured out or something. Well, far from it.
I'll tell you
But I mean,
what,
it's not easy.
you didn't say no to coming out of this podcast.
I knew it was a good idea.
Yeah.
I knew it was a good idea. Yeah.
There are just a couple other questions I have before we finish up here.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll ask this one. What is the nicest thing non-family member has ever done for you?
I have a lot of great gym members. They are like family. I feel like many of them would have my back in a lot of situations. And there was something about somebody at the gym one time that it was a very small thing, but at the time, because of my current state of mind then, and I don't know why I reacted the way I did, but it was, they ordered like a decal for me for like my car, and it was of an F-15. And she knew how much I love F-15.
It's on the back of your Forerunner.
It is on the bed. That's my second one, because the one that she gave me, it wore off. And I'm like, I have to have that on there, because you need a little piece of your past that that was my identity then. I was very connected to that. And she was somebody that paid attention to what was important in my life. And she didn't get me a $50 gift card to Dick's or something like that, or she didn't give me a $100 gift card to Canteen down the street or whatever, which would have been great, And I don't even remember the occasion. Was it my birthday or something? I don't even know. I think she just got me this thing, and she got me like a $5 decal that you get off the internet. I teared up and cried about it, because that was a part of my life that was extremely important to me, that not a lot of people understand how much that shaped me and things like that, and how that was the first thing I took extremely seriously in my life, is my military experience. And it was so simple, but it was like, at the time, I was like, I needed that more than anything, But I will say, I've been blessed with some very good people in my 100 people circle, to where they surprise me a lot, where they step up in times that, like, I don't expect that or anything. I'm not somebody that got all kinds of crazy gifts in my life or anything. So when somebody does something very small, I'm like, thank you very much for spending the time to, go to a store and purchase something for me and wrap it and give it to me like that. I can't believe somebody would even do that. I'm not used to a lot of those things being given to me. So no matter what's in this package, I appreciate you no matter what. And so I think it was that particular moment with her giving me that 15 decal for my car.
What are some role models in your life right now? If you need to keep any of them private, that's fine, but are there any that stand out?
I do. I mean, some would say they're average individuals or whatever. Like, not to me. I think it's the people that maybe been through some tough stuff, and that I give a lot of respect for the path that they've chosen in their life and things like that. But number one, to get me started on the path that I was on would be Todd Durkin. I mean, he's one of the biggest fitness guys out there, and I would get direct messages from this guy, and I'm talking, he is a very popular guy, and he took the time to give a direct message here and there for encouragement or whatever it was. So for a large period of time, it was him. I might have moved on from that because your mentors change and everything like that. But now it's other people that are kind of in the trenches with me doing the same thing in other cities or whatever. There's another fitness business owner named Chris. He lives in Coronado in California, and we're really on the same page with some things. And so there's some people that you can connect with that, you haven't known them for a super long time, but they're right beside you on that road,
Yeah.
So man, I'd have to, once again, going back to my gym members, I have some people there that, I don't say it to them too often, but I have a lot of respect for how they live their life and what they're all about and what they value. There's a guy, John Alberti. Right now I just see him occasionally at the gym, and he's in my fantasy football league, but he knows we're good friends, and I really like how he's lived his life and how he's handled the struggles in his life. I think that really defines somebody and shows who your character is and who you are. And so, but I could honestly name 10 to 15 people that I have a high degree of respect for, and would be here a long time if I went through every story with them. So,
Oh yeah. Well, for me, I am proud to say that you are one of those people who, inspires me.
thank you.
It lives a life that, I would be proud to live. So
Thank you very much.
yeah.
And I appreciate the invite today. I mean, this was
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
We almost tapped into some feelings around here. We got into some deep stuff.
Yeah.
But that was cool, man.
Vulnerable topics, but I know I'll be on the other end, I'm sure, with some other guests that I have coming on. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the whole goal of this, just to have some conversations that we're not used to having
Okay.
when we cross paths on the street and in the gym.
I'm not used to having these conversations.
Yeah.
It makes you think about a lot of stuff
And
too.
a year ago was, I think,
When we met up at the coffee shop.
it was a little bit after that though.
Oh.
Same day as my cousin's wedding, September 30th.
Mm-hmm.
You had urged me to write on a certain topic. And I've gone through certain phases where like I would write for 3 months, stop
Yeah.
writing, stop journaling goals and stuff like that.
Was it when I had you write about your legendary self?
Yeah, and that was on October 8th.
Oh, wow.
The morning of October 8th. I had a wedding to go to on October 7th.
Yeah.
I woke up at 5 a.m. on October 8th in a hotel an hour away, and I wrote that. I made that commitment. And ever since then, like I've probably written at least like probably 300 days
Oh, wow.
last year.
Yeah.
That is a habit I try not to miss. But some days I go into that journal not knowing anything that I'm going to
Yeah. You got stuff on your mind that you got to work out.
Yeah, and what's interesting is going back to some older pages and kind of looking at what wasn't a reality then.
Mhm.
You just put it on paper sometimes, even without you having to physically try, makes it a reality subconsciously. Like you put it on paper and then suddenly doors start to open in your life that
it gets your wheels turning a little bit.
Yeah. And it makes you say, wow, maybe I should go through that doorway, and if you wouldn't have written about it.
Yeah.
Put it on paper. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
Oh, for sure. I mean, and sometimes I don't do it unless somebody, a mentor or something, sits me down and tells me, hey, this is what you should do right now. And you're here 30 minutes, do it. I'm like, right now? They're like, yeah, you have 30 minutes, right? So the two things I've always liked were writing about your legendary self, 5 paragraphs or something about like,
I gotta go back and look at what I wrote.
Yeah, like
I
it's
take photos of it.
and it's like, okay, with the best version of yourself that you can imagine, what does that look like? In all those categories that I talked about before. Financially, what do I own? What am I giving to people? Because there's about 15 things you can give to people, and it's not material things. No. You can give someone encouragement every day. Your legendary self, you start to figure out what does that look like, and it's a lot of giving, and it's like, okay, where do you live? How often do you see your mom? How often do you do this? How often do you and it should be all included in there. And sometimes you start writing and it's like, man, I need like 2 hours right now. No, because you're starting to really dive into it. But then the other one that I did that was very powerful for me is thanking yourself. A thank you note.
Did that one too. Yeah, because of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we talk about that?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And just thanking yourself for everything that you've done for yourself in your life. You know, it reminds me of Snoop Dogg when he gets up on stage. He's like, first of all, I'd like to thank me. And like, but it's true. Like, you've made it this far, and it's further than we give ourselves credit for, because you've done a lot of tough things in your life. You should thank yourself because you're where you're at right now. Could be at a different place. So I always thought that was a good one. I'm glad you did it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to go look back on those.
There's all kinds of interesting little exercises like that just, it gets the wheels turning, man. And we need constant motivation in our lives. Everybody, every single person needs something, keeping the wheels turning. And so you can't ever have enough of that. And a lot of wasted time behind a screen. Some people, if they would maybe sit down and do something like that, maybe they don't want to face it. Sometimes people don't want to face it. Why would I read about this legendary self I'm never going to achieve? It's like, well, that's a very pessimistic way to look at it. I see it the other way. Or maybe your legendary self isn't that legendary.
Yeah.
So, but just gets the wheels turning. All that stuff's good, man. I'm glad you did it.
For sure. Well, we're gonna definitely have to do this again.
I like it, man.
Yeah, there's many more things that.
This room is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm getting some ideas already. Like, I feel like we should get back in here and, break out some specific topics or something.
Yeah. I mean, there are questions that I could have hammered you on: fitness, nutrition, even.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
So, but have to start somewhere. That's
Yeah.
what we did today. So.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you.